Hello, welcome to round 7 of 14. That's like halfway through the Canton tournament that I played just over a week ago now in Canton, New York. This is, yeah, like I said, game 7, and I'm playing Michael Fagen. So, 9 of the 14 games in the tournament were a round robin pairing, which means I get a chance to play every single person in the division. There were 10 people, including myself, so that's 9 other people that I was to play before the pairings got a bit more reliant on placement. So after 9 rounds, I'm going to be playing people that are similar in the standings to myself. But anyways, this was round 7. Michael was the strongest player that I'd left to play. And considering that Michael is a clubmate of mine, we've played countless times, but also in tournaments, he has a particularly good record against me. Coming into this tournament, we were, I think, even at 14 games apiece, or maybe 17, I don't remember. I think it was 14 games apiece, or something of the like. Um, Even despite me being significantly higher rated than Michael for the past few years, I was definitely afraid of this pairing because if I did lose this game, it's not only losing a game, it's also losing an even record against somebody who I'm supposed to be beating more often than I have been beating just based on my rating. So yeah, if I were to lose this game, it might have really snowballed for me because of the psychology involved in being worse in the head-to-head record. So I was really hoping above all to win this game, even though I had just won 6 other games, and even if I lost this game, I would be really doing really well in the standings. Anyways, Michael starts off with Craze, and this is my opening rack, and this rack was a little bit tough for me. I decided that I needed to hook Craze with my D and score some points, but um, the only way to get rid of a D and a T would be to either play Delt or Ted. So Ted here and Delt here, and both of these plays leave a G, and so I decided that leaving the G was worse than leaving 2 T's, which actually the valuation agrees with mostly. Yeah, zero point 0.3. The STT leave says zero point 0.3 better than the GST leave, just accounting for the extra score, and 2.3 better than GLST. Um, and yeah, there's not really anything else to consider. Jet is just worse. Um, but there's also Geld. So yeah, it was between Geld and Gled, and the difference between these plays is Gled doesn't give back the J6 scoring spot as much as Geld does. Geld you can just overlap, especially with an X, that would hurt a lot. And it's also a bit easier with Geld to access this triple. You can end in A plus consonant, so ag, and making a 2 letter word with the E, with a consonant or even with the vowel. I don't know how you would do that. Like it'd have to end in AA. But anyways, you can end in a vowel consonant, and after glad you just it's a bit harder. You'd have to end in AE um, to make a word. But the other problem is glad takes an O hook for ogled or ogled or however you want to pronounce the word. It's up to you. I used to say ogled. I never used the word, but I think most people say ogled. In any case, so that was the drawback of playing Gled. So I'm curious to see what a simulation thinks about my decision. Um, but yeah, I don't think playing something like Gelt is good here. It only scores 5 points. It does balance the leave as much as possible, and our bingo chances next turn are obviously very nice in comparison to the other plays, but not nearly as much, not nearly enough, basically. So yeah, definitely playing for 5 here would be a significant mistake. And I think also playing keeping 4 consonants would be just a tactical error in these positions. You just don't want to open yourself up to the possibility of drawing 2 or 3 consonants next turn on your 3 tile draw because that would just be really bad. unless you draw like into strangle or something. So it's always better to keep three consonants, significantly better to keep three consonants, lone consonants on your rack than to keep four, um, unless you really, really need to like maybe bingo. And so you really need to draw like specifically two vowels in a desperate position. Otherwise, it's just not right. So Geld and Glad simming similarly, and Delt as well. Delt takes the A. It also is easier to access this triple than this triple after either Geld or Gled. Just more words will start in a vowel than end in a vowel. Or start in a vowel than end in an A, I would say. More words definitely end in a vowel. Actually, someone might verify that. But yeah, delta also a possibility. And yeah, just keeping the G is slightly worse. But it's very interesting to see the difference between Geld and Gled. And I thought it was very close. I just liked that Gled is more restrictive. It's harder to find like an easy play here, and also it's possible that Michael might miss the O hook. I didn't think it was very likely. Michael is a very good play finder, but I thought that there was a non-zero chance that he may forget about the hook. Maybe for one turn even would be good enough. So that's why I played Gled. Um, he didn't actually know the word Gled. I think when I made this play, he was like really confused. He's like, glad I've never like seen that or something. But yeah, sometimes fours can be a bit weird. So that also gave me confidence that he might also miss the O hook. Because I don't think he held the play, but he definitely reacted to it in a way that indicated he didn't think it was a word or didn't know that it was a word. Um, Anyways, he played Bahaji for 25. Um, and here I drew a third T, so I sort of regretted not playing off a T there. And didn't really know what to do. Um, there's not really a great way to play off both T's unless I play Twit, which actually, I don't know why I didn't consider that. Did I consider that? I don't think I did. But Twit obviously only scores 7 points, but I can score with Baji's maybe next turn if I don't hit a bingo, and I also maintain my O for Uggled. So it's actually a decent play that I should have considered. Otherwise, there's just yeah, these plays. They're all very similar. So Wast, Watts, twos, toes, and outs. They're all very similar, and then we can put Twit in there, and we can give it a little simulation. But yeah, in this position, I'm down 38. He's just scored pretty well with Craze and pretty well with Baji. Got rid of some heavy letters in doing so, and so I kind of wanted to keep the pressure going, keep the scoring pressure, but I knew that it was significantly better than 17 points to keep the S. So I did consider Watt or two here. There's also I could also play like down here as well, but that just gives easy scoring back and not a really good lane, so I don't think that's very good. And yeah, Twit might just not score enough. So yeah, I took the scoring route here. It seems that everything is very, very close in valuation. I'm not going to let this simulate much longer because like everything's already very close. So I ended up playing twos. Just because it's on the bottom here doesn't mean that it's worse than the others. Because yeah, we've only simulated 500 iterations. After 3,000 iterations, we might see twos on the top. We might see it on the bottom. Things can change, but I like this. This was a bit, I think, more restrictive than the other plays in that position, like not allowing these underlaps. And I thought maybe he was going to miss Ogled now, because, like I said, he was not sure of the word Gled. And yeah, keeping the scoring pressure on was good. Um, but he plays Maria, so Ogled is not going to happen anyway. But now the board is pretty open. Um, and my draw was GED, and I actually missed a bingo here with Gettard. I wrote it down on my score sheet. Um, as you can see on the top here. Ooh, is it going to focus? It usually focuses. There you go. Right above Michael's name, Gettard. Um, and I liked it, but I knew that it was going to get challenged, and I wasn't sure enough of it that I was ready to play it. So yeah, that's a big mistake. I also missed G's, which is a nice overlapping play, and I played G'd here. Could also play greeted, but yeah. This is a humongous mistake. I'm not even gonna simulate it. Getter 3C, knowledge saddest. Let's say was unsure. So yeah, this is a big bingo mistake. Um, yeah, but instead I played G'd for 27, setting up another O hook. Um, which I don't know. I thought this was like the only play. If Gettard wasn't a word, but G's is definitely up there. I think probably better because it doesn't set up a letter I don't have. Um, Michael thought a long time and I think played high here, 21, which gets rid of the O hook mostly on OG'd. So I was happy that he didn't have it. And my draw was QUNT, and you see a trend here, right? I missed a bingo last turn, and I keeping the same letters. So I kept with GLED is TTS, so I kept two T's. On twos, I kept TET, two T's. G'd, I kept two T's. And quant, I keep two T's again. So you can see here that duplicate and triplicate letters are really bad. This is a very good example of why it's not so good to keep duplicate letters, but also a good example of why it can be double-edged. Sometimes you keep a duplicate letter, and you do draw into that bingo with it. Like with the T's, you draw. There are a lot of long words with two T's, but when you go to the shorter words, there are obviously way fewer options when you have two T's. Compared to when you have a T in another consonant, for example. But the two T combination isn't actually that bad when it comes to longer words. But if you miss said longer words, the mistake is far worse because you're then potentially stuck with those T's for longer. So that's just a big snowball effect that can happen when you have duplicate letters. And it's not a specific reason why duplicate letters are potentially bad because you could just find the right play and Gettard was the right play. But it can happen that if you do miss something, it's even worse because of your duplicates. So yeah, Quant comes down for 36. Um, Michael plays Axe for 24. And I draw into a bingo with two T's, lucky me, of Teleost. It plays in one spot for 69, nice. And plays with Gleed. And I was kind of hoping he would challenge Gleed after being unsure of Gled, but Michael did not challenge. Possibly mostly because I mean he knows that I know the words better than him, the shorter words, and also because he had this nice play that keeps him in the game. Wait for 46, but I actually get really lucky here and I draw another bingo. Um, so I saw tapaderas to the AS 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 a 9-letter word. Um, there might be more than that. But then I saw readapts here. I was like, okay, that's probably better than tapaderas. But then I saw pre-adapt, and I'm like, pre-adapt, is that a word? Pre-adapt. So I had to think for a while whether I was going to risk losing my turn on this move because I wasn't sure of pre-adapt. But after a while, I decided that pre-adapt made a lot of sense, that it should be a word, and indeed it is, and I play that for 90 points. And Michael almost challenges, but again, he had a very big play here that kept him in the game, so he didn't pull the trigger on the challenge and played Envoy for 50. Um, he knew that his position was very unfavorable, but that with Envoy he still had a chance. Um, And this is my draw, and I think there's just one clear play here beyond. Yeah, valuation is way higher than anything else. There's no way I can actually address this triple, so I knew that if Michael did draw into a bingo after Envoy, it would be a game. But luckily for me, he did not. He plays Voln for 21. And once again, in this position where I cannot actually do anything about this spot here, except for playing like a really, really tiny move like OR, OI, which would allow Michael to get back in the game in other ways. But it is something to consider potentially. But I play Runic because there's still a lot of play on this board. Maybe much later in the game, if I have this lead and there's pretty much nowhere else to go, I might make a play such as OR or probably OI because OR allows 8-letter words starting in R. But not in this position. Yeah, finally Michael cashes in on the spot. It's often like spots like these triples, also spots like OG'd. They remain for far longer than you might expect them to remain, just because people don't always have the right letters to go in spots. So yeah, here for 1, 2, 3, 3 separate turns, the main spot on the board by far was left alone. Michael, it's somewhat in his interest to leave it alone because he wants to be able to bingo there. But also he doesn't necessarily want to leave it alone because I can just score there. So it's sort of a catch-22 for him. But for me, immediately if I had to play there, I would play it just because I want to keep scoring. But anyways, Michael gets the spot first, plays Fang. And things start to get very interesting here. I'm only up by 33, and it's kind of hard to score on this board, but I can score a little bit. I'm gonna remove some plays here that make phony words. WOP no longer a word. Excuse me there. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting options. I'll say this is not valid either. And there's also, yeah, I think that sort of covers all the options. So okay, what's the threat here for me? I mean, there's a blank out, there's a couple R's out, there's an S out, so Michael can definitely bingo. But to do so, he would have to make AG, and that would require having the last A. Otherwise, he can make Raya, RYA. That seemed a bit more likely. So if I were to want to maybe block something, ideally I would potentially block this lane, the 13 row. And in this position where there's really only one spot on the board that's likely to bingo for Michael, that's definitely something I want to do. I am only up 33, so it's very difficult to outrun bingo here unless I'm scoring 30 points. So I did see that I could score 30 points with mops here, and I'm scoring 30, which brings me up 63, which means if he bingos here, I can potentially still outrun him. He might be up by a little bit, and then I can maybe re-overlap. And I thought that this was actually a decent chance for me to outrun an immediate bingo. The problem is it doesn't address the spots, so Michael can leave these spots open and score himself and threaten the same sort of ideas next turn. So I knew that he could score very well underneath. He couldn't bingo because it blocks everything. But I thought this was a good option. We can run a simulation, but I really did want to play something like romps or brims or something, making fangs, just to, or even like brig or prig or something, just to try and block. But the problem is making any play, making any vertical play in this area of the board. You can see all this open space. That will allow Michael to play through letters. So he might not even have a bingo to begin with, but if I do make a play that's trying to deal with the spot, he might bingo immediately, and I would just pretty much lose the game because I'm not scoring much. So that was the risk in this position of trying to play defense. Um, just just interestingly, like there's it's very hard to play defense here. Like you could play romp, for example, or romps. I actually considered that. Romp or romps. Romp obviously seems to make more sense because you're keeping your S and it's only one extra point to put it on. Why would you do that? However, the reason you might do that is because it actually restricts far more than just romp would. And the reason you might not want to do that, even knowing that it restricts more, is because Michael can actually then, if he has the last S, because we can see there's only one S left, he can use that S um, for the rest of the game. He can try and set it up. He can use it to score a lot of points and maybe even potentially get ahead after a couple of moves. And that's not a risk I was willing to take, although it looks like immediately like a really good idea, especially since there's no H that Michael could have to score like 50 points under here. If he has the last S, he can make very specific plays that an engine wouldn't even find. So the engine wouldn't even know the danger lurking if I play my S here. Um, like he could just make a play such as kin, and if he has the last A or the last S, it's very hard for me to interrupt that. And even if I were to like block, he could still score very well on the triple. And you see that a lot in games where the scores are like somewhat close. Somebody using the case letter, the last of or one of the last of some letter in the unseen pool to their advantage to threaten. And sometimes the threat is stronger than the execution because they threaten something you don't actually know if they have it. You try to block it, and then they might have something else that brings the game even or brings them ahead in the game as well. So that is something that is part of the metagame that I was acutely aware of at this point, and Michael is fully capable of making very very good strategic decisions to set up his case tiles. Um, so, anyways, um, seems like the sim so far likes just playing OB, not doing anything. I don't think this approach is right. I think it's really important here to try and do something, um, push the button a little bit, or push the game forward, if you will. And yes, of course, the play that I made mops also gets rid of my S, and I wasn't really super thrilled about that. So that actually might make it a little bit worse, considering what I just said, that he can do some threatening stuff maybe on this part of the board. However, by scoring 30 rather than however much romps would score 20, that denies Michael many opportunities to come back in the game without a bingo. So I can be pretty confident to try and block whatever he tries to do, um, and allow him to score without throwing the game away. So that's why I played mops. Not really sure exactly what to do here, but I think mops is a good attempt. Um, Michael plays of here after a long thought, which made me think that his rack wasn't so good. Um, so just the fact that he took so long to make this seemingly like really good obvious play, from my perspective, meant that he either didn't have an S or a blank, or his other letters were really bad. So if he had made this play quickly, I would not have made the same assessment. But he did take a long time, so that gave me a little bit of hope. Um, and this is what I drew, and now um, there's a threat of a high score with woofs. There's a threat of a bingo, but I decided that I was ahead 33 points. The most that Michael can score is with scry without using the blank. And that would be very bad. That would be, I think, 48 points. Is that right? 8, 10, 13, 26, 8, 10, 11. Yeah, 48 points for scry. And so if I didn't score much this turn, I could fall victim to that sort of play. But I was pretty hopeful that my decision was going to work out very well. So now that we see that this underlap happened, which I imagined was going to happen a lot of the time, the re-underlap of my play of mops. Now things are a lot more condensed in this area of the board, as you can notice. So before my play of mops, we had the 11, 12, 13, and 14 row that were all open for a potential 7 or 8 letter word eventually. But now that these plays have happened, I have the opportunity to make a very defensive play here and just try and stop all immediate bingos. And that is exactly what I did. You have all these plays in these parts of the board, and the only ones I considered were Retour, but that doesn't block ag bingos. I considered Woofer, which allows bingos through the R, and even making woofers that actually opens the 14 row for a 7 letter word. Obviously, it has to be a very specific one. And yeah, the other options were interesting. Like, is Rober a word? No, it's just borer. Yeah, I didn't think Rober was a word, but I can play now something like maybe Brig or something. But I decided I would play REI. Very odd looking play. Um, but it's extremely defensive. If you compare it with just a play that does nothing, Bonier, it doesn't block anything really. We can put in a simulation. You can see opponent next turn bingo percentage is extremely low. Yes, bingos are still possible. There might be some 10 letter word even from REI, like reiteration, but um, oh, that's too many letters. But um, yeah, there might be some bingo as a 10, but there also might just be it might just be bingos on the C column, which I was aware was an issue. There's like some probably like ONES word. Yeah, COLONES, for example, is a bingo that I spot just by looking at the pool. I was aware that these bingos would potentially exist, but if he has that sort of rack, I'm pretty much dead anyway. I figured because you need to have like a really, really good and precise rack to play there. But also, I saw that keeping the K, even if he did have something starting in C, for example, I would have a huge comeback at 1A with the K. So it might actually not be over after that. Especially since I'm leaving 4 tiles in the bag. So if Michael doesn't draw um, into an outplay after his bingo, then I could still win the game. So it wasn't totally over. I wasn't totally throwing in the towel to any C column bingo, but I was very much committed here to making a very defensive play and blocking whatever openings Michael might want to make. And given the structure of the board, the only place that he could really reopen things after REI would again be on this top left side of the board. And if he does play anywhere in this top left side of the board, I can make parallel plays. I can definitely deal with pretty much any opening he makes on this side of the board, which also would end up blocking all the bingos that Quackle, pretty much all the bingos that Quackle is finding. Um, so I can do a little thing here and actually show you guys what possible bingos Michael has after REI. Let me just save this game. Canton. So these are all the bingos he has still that fit. Oh yeah, okay. There are the double S bingos that make emos and whiffs. I'm gonna sneeze. I didn't sneeze, but I turned off my audio. Man, it's so dusty in this apartment. um, all these score sheets. I so enjoy covering these videos, but I have so many old score sheets that have accumulated dust over the years that I need to get like some vacuum cleaner or just do a whole lot of dusting. Maybe I'll do that before the next video. But yeah, the worst is obviously this like disaster scenario where he has and sees um, one of two bingos at 12H, Liasic and Loasic. I don't even know if he knows these words. They're pretty improbable. But then there's also the plays on the C column. Um, Syconia is really good, and yeah, the double S bingos here also would win the game for Michael. But considering how long he took with OF, I really got the impression that he didn't have both the S and the blank. At the very least, he didn't have both of those. So I wasn't really too concerned with double S bingos unless he had just drawn them with a two tile draw. Um, and yeah, all of these bingos here, there's a lot of them, but again, that only accounts for like a 2% chance because of how many possible racks you can have with all these letters. So it does seem very threatening when you see all of the threats here. But that's just a very normal thing in most positions. The board isn't totally dead, and there are so many things that can go wrong for you. But those so many things don't often don't amount to much of a chance for your opponent. There's always a slight chance, or almost always a slight chance on most boards. But again, this is only less than 2% of possible plays that Michael would have. And yeah, there's around 40 possible bingos with maybe 30 different racks or so that he could have after REI. So that's actually really good. Um, anyways, what Michael does instead is he makes a really, really cool play here of sick for 32. Let's get rid of all this. Michael plays sick for 32, which not only scores a lot of points, obviously I knew that if he had an S, he could score in the 30s, maybe even 40 in this spot, which was a risk I was willing to take with my play. But he's setting up a K. Um, he's also setting up an E. But he was really just hoping. Maybe he had both. No, he didn't have both E's. But he was just hoping that he would draw the K and threaten so many big plays. And even if I were to block, he might still be able to outrun me if he drew the K. So that was his idea with sick. He just gave up on the idea of playing a bingo. Um, and tried, since he saw that I was scoring so little, he was like, okay, let me try to take advantage of that. Score 32 points, put the ball in your court, leave one tile in the bag. Um, but luckily, I drew extremely well. I drew EY blank, and curb is by far, well, curb is 60 points, and that's just going to win every single game. So that's what I did. Sadly, the whole idea that Michael had didn't work out. Um, but yeah, he took a really long time here. What did he have? He had what did I draw? I drew an A. Okay, so this was his rack. And yeah, he played door over here. Let's see how good that plays. Um, okay, so he needs to play Roulier to go out in two. That makes sense. But door is pretty good. And here, I think I made the best play of any, but it wasn't for the right reason. Um, if I had played Odie, I actually would have gotten one extra point in the end game. But I played any, which is the best play, next to another play. But it's because of this OG spot that stayed the entire game without being used that I forgot about. So I ended up scoring 7 fewer um, than I should have. Um, totally forgetting about, like I said earlier, about these hooks. You might just miss a hook for one turn, and that could cost you. But anyways, the game was over. Luckily, I drew the second blank. Very lucky draw after REI, and that was enough to win. So yeah, that was game 7, and I'll bring you guys game 8 very soon. And now I'm 7-0 if you're keeping track. So doing really well in this tournament, especially considering Michael was a threat. The next 2 games are against two pretty good opponents as well, Bernard Gottlieb and Dean Hergott, and you'll see how those games go. All right, catch you guys soon.